As you are no doubt aware, AutoCAD's DWG format is by far the most commonly used file format for computer-aided design files. There are countless DWG files in active production and in archives throughout the world. Even if your goal is to completely transition away from AutoCAD and begin using Revit exclusively for your firm's design and production needs, it's likely that you'll continue to use, access, and receive DWG files into the foreseeable future. In this chapter, we'll discuss the ways that you can use those files in your Revit workflow. So why don't we start with a look at which file formats are supported. So of course we have DWG, and that's AutoCAD's native format, and that's by far your most popular format. But DGN is also supported. This is MicroStation's native format. We can use DXF files from any variety of CAD programs, SAT files, which is a 3D CAD format, and even SketchUp files, SKP files. So all of these formats are supported, and they all get imported into Revit projects in much the same way. Now, we can bring a CAD file into Revit in one of two ways. We can import it or we can link it. Now, we'll talk about some of the pros and cons in a later movie. But for now, I just want you to understand what the difference is between import and link. An import is essentially embedded directly into the Revit file. It becomes part of the Revit file, and there's no link maintained back to the original. A link, of course, is referenced, kind of like a Revit link is that we looked at in a previous movie. It maintains a reference back to the original CAD file, and if that CAD file is changed by the original author, you can update that link and see the latest changes directly in Revit. Now, whether you're importing or linking, you'll have to give Revit a little bit of information on how it should interpret the CAD data coming in. It's not native data, so it's not going to be able to interpret it on its own. So, for example, we'll most likely have layers or levels in the CAD file, and we're going to have to tell Revit which of those layers we want to use and how we want them used. We might have colors coming in that CAD file, so we might want to say whether or not we want to preserve those colors or change it all to black and white. There's, of course, the issue of units. We want the size of the file to be interpreted correctly, and we have to tell Revit whether or not the data is either 2D or 3D data. So there's plenty to do when we bring these CAD files in, and so all of these will be options that we'll have available to us in the dialog box. And finally, you can actually export your Revit files to CAD files if there are members of your team that are still working in CAD, and Revit supports both DWG and DGN for this purpose. So just because you're moving to Revit does not necessarily mean that you have to leave your AutoCAD files behind. Revit is capable of both importing and exporting DWG files, as well as several other CAD formats. With a little care and some careful procedures, you'll find that a practical workflow can easily be established. There are naturally disadvantages as well, and in the next several movies, we'll explore the procedures, best practices, and processes for using CAD files within Revit.